So we just kind of have the pre-show ramble. We are live, but we are like 4 more minutes actually to go. So hi everyone. So this is Stuart. So in a while I'm going to officially introduce him. So currently there is nobody watching. I'm just talking to the screen, not as if we haven't done this before. So we were just talking a little bit about the health and fitness and how does the physical activity help with regards to the journaling process, right?
Yep. Well, today is probably the latest that I've actually gotten out to do my conferencing and stuff like that, because most of the time, like during the day, I'll have at least a couple of webinars, meetings, and stuff like that, just to kickstart. I think I'm in a really good place. I don't know about the rest of the people. A lot of people are depressed in spite of the fact that they've got really a lot of things going for them, right? But sometimes it's just the simple things, like going out, taking a walk. Some people are sworn by that really helps me. So I think it's a good opportunity. Okay, here's the thing. There's some people who don't have, and I tell you, Singaporeans and Asians in general, we tend to take this for granted, right? A lot of people at this juncture, they're just breaking into spring, right? Spring, summer, mid of spring. Sun dark, dank, all that. We got sunlight just stepping outside, going downstairs the HDB or whatever, and just taking a short walk and soaking some sun. And we all know what vitamin D actually does for us. It's a means to metabolize the cholesterol, and then to use that as a means to strengthen the transmission, right, of different kinds of nutrients like your zinc and stuff like that. So it's fascinating that a lot of people have even forgotten that there's sunlight. It's like in their mind is really like dark storms and all that, and they live there. Truth of the matter is that no matter where we are, and I suppose the darkness, and maybe it's nice to see that I'm shrouded by darkness. The fact that you got darkness means that you can distinguish where's the light now.
That's true. And so right now the light is your face. Everything is right now I can see it's just your face. It's the brightest part of the whole video. Yeah. So anyway, we have I think 2 people who are watching right now. So if anyone who's watching, you can comment and say hi for the 3 people who are watching right now. If you feel free to leave a comment, or if you want any questions that's popping up later, I will just flash on the screen.
Yeah. If you guys have any questions on...
Yeah. Okay, so we have about a minute to go. So that is actually, we haven't started yet. So, so let's see. We're gonna get started in a while, and let's see. Well, I'm also just since we're just a minute ago, we just start a little bit early, right? So here we go. I'll now play my intro video. Okay, that's it. Very quick intro video, kind of like those talk show hosts, right? So anyway, welcome everybody to this this chat. It's just between me and Stuart Tan here. Now, who is Stuart Tan? I want to interview. I'm interviewing him. He is an NLP practitioner since 1995, right? So that's like 25 years. Yeah, 25 years already. And this is what I just ripped from his profile. He says that he helps organizations, he helps people and organizations elevate past pain and suffering of difficult changes. And he has served more than 500,000 people, 500,000 and counting. So now today plus me, 500,001. So I believe there's more than that. I believe there's a whole bunch more. So this is Stuart, and I'm very honored that he can join me because he's usually very busy. And also he sleeps at 9, so this is close to his sleeping time. So I appreciate him to do this this kind of this important work to me, I feel, since we're going to be talking a little bit about mental health today. Now, let's introduce Stuart. So this is Stuart. So maybe you can share a little bit more about yourself and what are you doing right now?
Okay, so well, thanks for having me, Asher. I think it's been quite a few years since we last met in person, right? So it's nice to be able to catch up on one hand. On the other hand, I don't know how many people who are actually watching actually want to know about mental health issues. Personally, I think mental health issues have always been kind of sidelined on one hand. On the other hand, most people try not to, when people are bleeding, right, they tend to ignore the fact that they're bleeding, at least psychologically. And when they try to move, they're wondering why it hurts so much, and then they take it out on other people. You know what I'm saying? So right now during this lockdown, I'm just keeping myself back on my schedule. Actually, there's nothing much that has changed. Being a solopreneur for such a long time, it has gotten me back into a space where I actually want to. So while I'm doing my webinars with corporations, teaching them leadership, team building, change management, things like that, my gym is just next to me, right? So I installed my own cage. I do my workouts as regularly as I can. I do my best to wake up by about 5:30. Luxury of time, sometimes I can wake up at about 7. I work until probably about 12, get my lunch today. Last couple of days, I've been experimenting with 1 meal a day, and I've been very successful with it. On an intermittent fasting routine, we can talk about that as well, because it's actually intertwined with the mental health aspect. And the rest of the day is basically time off. About 4 to 5, I'll check in on my emails, because I know some of these corporate clients of mine, sometimes they've got last minute things that they, shove into the last part of their day. It's like, oh no, I forgot to contact Stuart about this. Then they'll send me some random email. And of course, I have to make sure that I receive it and tell them that I will respond first thing in the morning. I do my best to maintain my boundaries, because the evening time is a very sacred space for me, right? So like 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. is catch up with Netflix, my girlfriend, my cats. We watch. Sometimes it's not the show, you just need that space to get your mind in order before you go to bed. I don't like going to bed with worries and issues, because it just causes me to have very bad sleep. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but overall, I find that this is a very, very good time for me. I can reschedule my entire workflow, start work at 5, finish off by 12. That's already a full day's work, plus another couple of hours later on in the evening. Being able to do my research anytime I want, right? Comfort of my home. I can travel to Pakistan if I wanted to, because I've got a client coming up there. I can travel to Vietnam, because I've also got another client coming up there. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. In fact, this is the kind of stuff that should have happened like 10 years ago. But with all the technology, bandwidth, and all that was available back then, nobody actually did it. That's why there's this tongue-in-cheek graphic, right, that says, oh, who's the best change agent in your organization? Your CEO, your manager, or COVID-19? And of course, everybody will circle COVID-19 as the right answer, right? Impetus for change. And if anything, I'm so glad that I've had the opportunity to do these things. I can work on my other hobbies and projects. I'm a woodworker. I'm a amateur woodworker. I'm also an gemologist, but it gives me time to do these things because they're right on my table, right? And guess what? After this whole thing, my lease comes up in September. You can bet your last dollar in your wallet that I'm not going to be extending my rent, right? It's as simple as that, because there's no reason to, right? So a lot of new realizations that have happened during this period of time. I've been volunteering my help to people who are in depression during this period, because I feel that the best time to be able to give forward is when you are in a crisis. Number one, it takes your mind off things. Number two, it helps you to put your strengths to good use, right? And when that happens, your spiral of self-esteem actually goes off, and you just keep continuing doing that. And I find that although some people will say, oh, that's very shallow, you're doing it for a purpose, but hey, there are always different kinds of return, right? Return on investment, return on help. Is whether you decide to cash in on that or not, right?
Perfectly
the
true.
Good news for me is that I feel that when it just comes back,
Yeah. So perfectly true. So I think there's a quote that I just ripped off from the internet. So I just asked, what is mental? Mental health is the level of psychological well-being or an absence of mental illness. It is the state of someone who is functioning at a satisfactory level of emotional and behavioral adjustment. So today we're going to be talking a little bit also about mental health. But as you mentioned, it can be a sensitive topic. So why should we be paying attention to this right now?
Well, let's take a look at just Singapore alone. For those of you who are from other countries, you have references elsewhere. the top 5 mental disorders in Singapore, the mental illnesses in Singapore, are in this order. Okay, number 1, depression. Right, people are depressed. Sometimes that leads to suicide, which is a very sad thing. You got this thing called anxiety. Right, so anxiety is also very high. It's number 2. Number 3 is alcohol abuse disorder. You should not be surprised because there's so many pubs in Singapore, and they're always crowded, especially if it's in the CBD. The 4th one is OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and the last one is schizophrenia. Okay. Now, when I take a look at all of these, there is also something called comorbidity, meaning to say that, and again, my background being a psychologist, I'm not just an NLP practitioner. I train NLP practitioners, master practitioners, to be able to utilize effective interventions in similar cases, right? I mean, if they have a background in psychology already, great. Then they can utilize that to up their game. But when I train people in whether it's coaching skills or psychological intervention skills, I'm very mindful of one thing. 2 so-called mental illnesses can happen at the same time. So if you're schizophrenic, you can also be depressed. And the question is, did the depression cause the schizophrenia or vice versa? Right? We don't know. And we're not so advanced in psychiatric science to be able to tell that. But if you ask me, I'm sort of like a rule breaker. So when I see someone who's got schizophrenia, there is some kind of a root cause that has not really been looked at. There's the issue with schizophrenia is people say, oh, that's like, oh, you got split personality. Come on. If you don't understand what it is about, go read about it first. It's like you don't understand what is this ingredient inside my vanilla essence. The other day I went to NTUC FairPrice to get vanilla essence because, we're cooking now. So I wanted to make some pancakes. And lo and behold, I look at the vanilla extract. It's supposed to be just vanilla beans, right? Vanilla bean extract, cold press, whatever. You know what's inside? Propylene glycol. That's an industrial lubricant. That's the kind of stuff that they put in the tar roads. And looking at this, I'm wondering, why in the world should I actually consume this, right? Look, if you understand the history of the development of psychopharmacology, you understand that okay, so you've got depression. I give you X. If depression goes down, you're better. Case closed, right? But the truth of the matter is that that's the last thing that you can say is a case closed. You go back to the same environment. Your environment controls your behavior. So you're with a psychiatrist, you're fine, right? You go back home I'm sorry, but shit hits the fan again, right? Because the family dynamics could be at play there, right? So there are so many multiple triggers that very few people actually know how to handle depression. They say it's a genetic thing. Sure, everything is genetic. You're human, you're alive. Everything that's caused by the environment or by you, there's no two ways about it. It's just these two things. But you have to remember that the environment also triggers off certain kinds of genetic predispositions. They call it epigenetics. We'll talk about that in a while. So why pay attention to it now? Because COVID-19 is a wonderful time as far as I'm concerned, because number one, you get the opportunity to see how beautiful the world is without the interference of human beings. Take a look at the roads now, so peaceful, right? I don't have people horning their guts out because there's a traffic jam, anymore, right? I don't smell the bad, the diesel or petrol fumes anymore, the exhaust fumes. Every morning when it rains, nowadays it's getting a little bit more rainy. The sun is up sometimes, and I get a chance to really observe Singapore for what it could be. Imagine that this was the status quo. We didn't have to go to work physically to a specific location. We could spend the 2 hours, 2.5, maybe even up to 3 hours of transit time doing what? Hey, so there's some people who run a sideline on 3 hours a day, and they're making like what, 6 figures? You guys, those people who are listening in, and you yourself probably know some of these people, right? 3 hours a day, a lot of time, and wow, we squandered it, playing Candy Crush on the MRT, right? So the best time is that right now, COVID-19 has actually shown us that there is a way forward. There's a better way forward. There's a new normal that's coming, and we better take care of ourselves. Otherwise, the next time something similar like this happens, whether it could be a plague, it could be a pandemic, it could be an earthquake, it could be a terrorist attack, it could be an asteroid falling on the earth, Doesn't matter. It could be a zombie apocalypse for all I care. The truth is, when you're staying at home and you're unable to get back to some kind of a routine or ritual, you're going to go down that obvious decline, right? People who are isolated. I've spoken to several organizations about this already, and many of them who are so-called lost, they're unsure of themselves because this transition is very sudden. And this is why this so-called lockdown period, as is experienced by most parts of Southeast Asia and maybe some parts of the world, the lockdown is not causing these bad feelings. The lockdown is merely revealing the cracks that already pre-existed. If you're isolated, it means that you didn't know that video conferencing is a great tool for you to bridge that social isolation, right? You didn't know that you needed to take care of your health. You didn't know that you needed to be a little bit more mindful of other people's feelings and build your EQ. All of these things are critical, but when people are facing the problems now, it's simply because they were hidden. Why? They were hidden under the context of the corporate structure. You can go to a place, you can tap someone on the shoulder and tell them, hey, I need this, and immediately it comes. But now when people have competing needs, it can drive them a little bit insane, isn't it? And I'm not talking about insanity from a psychiatric standpoint. Okay? I am a psychologist, I'm a counselor and a therapist. I have my own views about psychiatry. I personally do not believe that psychiatry helps other than in a life and death situation. So schizophrenic feels like, I've got voices in my head telling me to kill myself. Go see a psychiatrist, get some drugs, okay? Get yourself leveled down. Once you're back to some kind of semblance of homeostasis, then go through some form of therapy. Deal with the urgent things if it's necessary. But
so
why wait?
Can you share a little bit what is homeostasis? Because you're using very pro terms.
So homeostasis is a natural biological mechanism where you get into balance. Like, for example, your body in the morning will begin to, the reason why it wakes up is because the body begins to produce some levels of cortisol, right? So early in the morning when you wake up, there's a hormone inside your body, which is also a stress hormone that wakes you up. That also triggers the start of the conversion of melatonin, which is the chemical that helps you to fall asleep at night, into something called serotonin that makes you feel good during the day. When you smile, you have serotonin in your system. So there is a circular sort of like a system diagram you could draw with all of these chemicals inside your body, neurochemicals and biological chemicals alike. But you have to remember that the body goes into balance. A few cycles that we go through, there's a 90-minute ultradian rhythm. What's an ultradian rhythm? During this 90 minutes, you go through your highest peaks of focus and concentration, and then it dips to the lowest. And some people are unproductive because they're trying to extend that for 2-3 hours, when in reality, they should stop at 90 minutes, have a quick break, go walk around, do a few push-ups, and then come back to it, right? Another set of homeostasis is if you get infected by a virus, your body fights it. You start having this flu symptoms and all that, right? That's the body out of balance. The body will begin to work itself towards balance once the immune system caters to the pesky invader that has attached itself to our DNA and started replicating, right? So the virus has to come in, invade the DNA in order for it to replicate itself. Without that, there is no way it can replicate. So self-care boosts the immune system, allows you to experience less stress levels, and you can notice that these things are in a constant flux. There's a dynamic flux there that is a very thin line. It's not so much like that science, you go and calculate that you got a balance, but there is a way to get ourselves into a natural state of balance, being grounded, being centered, being at peace with oneself, right? So to get to that state, there are various techniques. I may go at length at talking about them. One of it is obviously meditation, mindful meditation, very simple to do. Breathing techniques, breath work is very, very powerful as well. Some people would actually utilize emotional expression strategies such as journaling, playing music, dancing, all of these things which actually can contribute to a sense of well-being at this point of time.
Okay, so that means if, let's say, thanks for sharing that. There's a whole bunch of stuff for one simple question. So this is like 25 years at least of experience. All is like Stuart's trying to squeeze everything all in. So I appreciate you sharing so much information. And I think from what I hear is that when people are displaying all these behaviors, or they have these thoughts, mindsets, or this, or like what you say, this kind of dangerous dark thoughts that they have, then it's best to see a psychiatrist if they are contemplating thoughts of like suicide or killing somebody, or those kind of very extreme thoughts. Then they really should seek psychiatric help. Whereas for everyone else, it is good to actually do take, like for example, like what you mentioned, like journaling activities, physical activities, to kind of get your uh, hormone levels in a sense, okay, to a balance,
Yeah.
right?
So I'd like to make a quick mention on this since we're on the topic of suicide. I was nominated by my Army Chief of Staff to do this 25-day, 25 push-ups challenge. You got to video record yourself and, nominate someone else after that. But that was for suicide awareness as a movement, right? But here's what we have. We have people in the Samaritans of Singapore, SOS. You can just call them. They're on call 24/7, right? It's an essential service for people who are suicidal. Otherwise, at least talk to somebody. And if you are the person that these people talk to, then encourage them to seek professional help. Because to be fair, you don't want to be carrying the burden of someone who might be carrying suicidal thoughts and end up being wrong, right? You don't want to bear that burden. So when someone gives you a hint that there's something out of sorts, you detect it in their emotion, in their mood, in the way they carry themselves. Gently recommend them, look, I can only help you by being with you. If that's what you need, I'm here for you. But if you need more than this, I am helpless. I don't have the means to be able to help you any further because I'm not a professional in this area. So here are some numbers I recommend that you call, right? So it's a very simple conversation, but you need to be a good friend to be able to say that. Otherwise, like you said before the session, we were talking about this, nobody actually wants to admit that they are helpless, that they are at wit's end, and there's nothing that they can do about it, especially when it's got to do with the psychological aspect. So in Singapore, it's like, huh? You siao or what? And that kind of thought is more degrading, right? When someone actually tells you, hey, siao, are you crazy or not? That's not the way it's meant to be. Psychological imbalance happens from time to time. I'll tell you, last year was one of the worst years in my life, not because of anything else. My dad passed away. He was suffering from diabetes for 10 years and then for 5 years battling cancer. So his liver failed. I fortunately was there as he was about to pass. And I didn't really think about it. I mean, I should have, as a psychologist who studied grief and stuff like that. I should have known, right? But I was attending to the funeral proceedings, blah, blah, blah. And it hit me in the back. Came and bite me in the back several months later. So it's like at first you thought you're okay, right? And then suddenly there's this dip. It's a psychological response. Grieving is a psychological response. Some of you have lost your job. Some of you have lost your loved ones to COVID-19. Some of you have lost clients. Some of you, and this is the strange thing. There was a medical doctor who said, in COVID-19, all the leaders have been brought to their knees because for all the strategic thinking that they've done, they've never done zero revenue predictions, right? You can simply simulate and go like, hey, what if this year we don't have any revenue? What can we do? Nobody's smart enough to do something like that, right? But the truth of the matter is that if we could have predicted it, we could have prevented our mental illness, right? If we can predict it, we can prevent it. And I can tell you, there are so many things that are so volatile and uncertain out there in the future. If you don't future-proof yourself, you're going to simply allow the cracks to show up again when things are under crisis. On normal days when the economy is recovered, hey, everything is hunky-dory, right? But you have to remember that depression, it hits 1 in 3 Singaporeans in their lifetime. Okay? So that's not a surprising statistic at all. Anxiety hits 1 in 7 Singaporeans in their lifetime, right? So why be surprised? But what is surprising to me is 75% of people don't speak to anyone, including their pastor, their priest, their whomever, right? That they can just go and speak to as as a so-called first level of help, the shaman, I don't care, right? But very few people even do that. They don't talk to someone who is at least empathetic, not to make a judgment, right?
Right.
So the trouble with and some people, like what you're displaying here, is pointing at some of these issues with regard to the COVID-19, maybe isolation and all that, people going crazy, throwing chairs out their window and all that, bouts of crying. Can you imagine what it's like on the front lines that we don't see? We can't see it anyway, because the nurses have to be working around the clock, right? The doctors have to be working. My brother's a doctor. He's in the he's not the guy who makes the rounds, right? But he's looking at the pathology of the disease. So he has to do a lot of study to figure out how this thing is going to affect us. So you don't see him at home. He's basically living in his dungeon in his cage. But you can bet your last dollar that the people who are on the front lines right now, the last thing they need to hear is, oh, there are 799 new cases, of which 95% are foreign workers, blah, blah, blah. That's the last thing that they need to hear, because it's going to add more tension. And yet, they have to soldier on.
Yeah.
The mindset of resilience is not it's not that you have no resilience, that's why you have to do it. It's actually a natural mechanism. You go low, your natural psychological homeostasis forces you to come back up. You look at it, you reflect upon it, and in due course, you gain some wisdom out of it. Unless you want to remain resentful all your life, unless you want to remain angry all your life, then you won't let it go. Okay. So there's a guy called William Bridges. He talks about transitions, whether it's a midlife transition, a career transition, a grief transition. He talks about it in this way. Okay. So in fact, this is a great time for me to share the screen.
Yeah, sure. Bring up the screen. So while Stuart's bring up the screen, guys, thanks so much for watching. So for those of you who liked and gave a heart, thank you so much. Feel free to leave any comments that you've got. So here we go. Let's pull up your screen. There we go.
Yeah. So what I have here, you should be able to see Bridges' transition model, right?
Yep.
Okay. So essentially, it's a very simple three-phase model. Number one, you have an ending of something. Doesn't matter. Ending of a relationship, ending of a job, ending of a good economic time. It doesn't matter, right? So this is where there's a sharp drop in that particular mode or mood. So the mood is defined by feelings of being in denial, shock. Remember the news reports of this youngster who was saying that, lining up outside IKEA to buy the meatballs for the last time. Do you remember that? Saying, oh, this is my health issue. What does the government have to do with that? That's called democracy gone wrong, all right? Just because you have a knife doesn't mean you can do anything with a knife. I don't think people understand that. Just because you can hit someone really hard doesn't mean you should. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of people don't really understand that. So the neutral zone, this is where a lot of people are today, right? Confusion, disorientation, frustration, skepticism. And up to a point where it becomes so overwhelming, they say, let's forget about it. And they become apathetic. Now, this is the start of depression, okay? If it's extended over 6 months, touch wood, hopefully it doesn't, right? But the truth is that we don't know, okay? The world out there is very uncertain. Even if it's okay for us, like it's cleared up in Vietnam, almost. It's cleared up in South Korea, Taiwan. But even if they were to open the borders, who are they going to be trading with? What plane are they going to fly to, right? You know what I'm saying? So there's no parity in this. You don't come out a champion simply because you, as a country, are okay. You need to seek these new beginnings. So beginning with the end in mind, which is a Stephen Covey thing, you start off with, what is the new beginning that I'm attempting to create? Like you created this talk show, which is fantastic, right? I'm glad that I'm a part of this. I'm glad to give back to society and so on. At the same time, there are a lot of people who want to hang on to the old endings. You need to learn how to let go of that. Okay. And of course, right now we're saying that if you delay the neutral zone for way too long, that curve is going to extend for much longer. Right? It's going to drag itself out through time. That is the reason why a lot of people, psychologically speaking, they end up still trying to deal with the problems of their childhood because they haven't let that go. Okay. And the truth of the matter is the reason why people experience these type of issues is they thought it was a minor thing.
Mhm.
They thought it was a minor thing. Okay, so today you eat one packet of Maggi noodles. It is a minor thing. But because you like it, you eat it tomorrow and then the day after. And then maybe for 365 days a year, you eat Maggi instant noodles with plenty of MSG, coloring, preservatives. What eventually happens to your bodily system is going to break down. The nutrition is insufficient for a proper, well-being of an individual. So if any of you are thinking, oh, it's just a small thing, get that out of your head. It is not a small thing. You need to attend to it. Do you remember how it's like you're walking through a forest and then you got a cut, right? For most Singaporean males, it's like, that's a small thing. Hey, what if that was laden with some kind of poisonous sap from the tree? Maybe it was a pong pong tree or something. Right? What if it caused sepsis, right? And then you end up having to chop off the entire arm. You don't want to wait until that point of time in order to begin the urgency of that change, if you understand where I'm coming from, right?
That is very true. Mm.
So my take is this: if you guys who are listening in, end up wanting to help people, great, this is good. You will still need to be taken care of. Who's going to take care of you? By all counts, depression is experienced far more by caregivers. I know for a fact, every time I'm taking care of someone in a counseling session, don't you think that after seeing a lot of depressed people, it also rubs off on me, right? So I need
Completely
to.
agree. I completely agree because when it comes to like the caregivers, a lot of people kind of forget that the caregivers are humans as well. I mean, we've seen videos of nurses literally just crying, because they are just so helpless. And not only do they feel helpless, the people who are not sick are attacking them for doing their job. So it just makes them feel so sad that I cannot help but feel for them, and that these caregivers need more love as well.
Yes. Well, again, I want to capitalize on this, right? The event that's happening is not the thing that's causing the emotion. It is the stuff that's happening inside your head. Now, I know it sounds like, oh, okay, yeah, so that's a motherhood statement. Of course, it's happening inside my head, but what exactly, right? So here's the thing. Here's a cup, okay? Here's a cup. Don't know whether you guys can see it. Okay, this is a
Yeah, we can
cup.
see that. Mm.
If you see this cup, right, you don't kind of like freak out because you saw a cup. Oh my God, it's a cup. I'm going to die. You don't do that, right? But a lot of people are doing this because they're hearing news about COVID and they're hearing that people are dying. There's a higher number of infections. That information has traveled through your brain and the filtration system inside your mind is forming up a fake pattern that tells you that, oh, something bad is happening. And as a result, the trigger leads to a response. And once you rehearse this with great emotion, what does that become? That becomes a habit. Your emotional habit just simply reiterates every time there's a trigger. It's like, when you're walking past your favorite char kway teow or your favorite fried chicken store, and you smell the aroma, it triggers off a hunger response, even though you're not hungry, right? And then you just go by and you overeat and then you put on weight, all that kind of stuff, right? Especially if you overeat.
Mhm.
Now, it's the same thing that happens for those of us who are experiencing trauma. What do I mean by trauma? A negative feeling that was embedded or imprinted in your mind, in your emotions, since the period of time age 0 to 7 years old, right? That caused you to seek out self-soothing behaviors. What kind of self-soothing behaviors? It can be anything. The moment you find yourself repeating addictive behaviors, taking a lot of sugar, binge eating, binge drinking, drugs, physical drugs, that is, trying to socialize with people, sex, um, overwork, alcoholism, and workaholism carry the same suffix because it is an addiction. And when
Mm.
people try to find their competence in something outside of themselves, right, then they become, it's like, oh, how about this? I'll get into a relationship right now because I feel bad. And because of this relationship, I can care for people and it makes me feel good. That's the lousiest way to get into a relationship, right?
Agreed.
Um, it- or it's like, oh wow, I feel really depressed. Maybe I'll go invest in the stock market today. Come on, we all know what kind of result you're gonna get, right? So it's silly to not pay attention. If you get the cut, go attend to it
Mm.
because you know that it could turn out bad. If you feel emotionally down, then you need to then you'll notice it through your performance. The things that you're supposed to do are not being done. You're arguing with people all the time. You're experiencing a lot of burnout, right? You're stressed. You're looking at things that are deadlines. Oh my God, I have to finish this. Well, you've got depression, anxiety, and some form of addiction going on all at the same time. But instead of telling people, oh, get rid of your addiction, I don't do that. I tell people to look at the utility of the addiction. Why are you addicted to the job? Why are you addicted to that drug? Why are you addicted to that, I don't know, TV show, whatever it is? You're addicted because it does something for you. You automatically went to it because it has some self-soothing function, right? Then you have to look at other ways to get the same thing. Like there was a guy who told me that he's overeating and he's chronically overweight because he's constantly stressed. He gives himself the excuse to eat whatever he wants because it is a reward for his hard work. Okay, fine, right? Most of us know that that's BS. But when you look from his perspective, he's working so hard, he's making a lot of money. Why not, right? Give yourself a treat, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then eventually it's like 50, 60 kgs heavier than before. So
That's what happened to Elvis Presley.
So we ask the question, why are you self-soothing in this way? What does it do for you? It makes me feel full. It makes me feel satiated. It makes me feel comforted. Good. Do you know what this means? This means in other aspects of your life, that's missing. You're missing from your relationships. It's missing from your work and fulfillment. That's why they call it fulfillment, not fulfillment, right? So it's ironic that if you do a little bit of journaling, you go back, you review this, you can find some avenues of hope. There's always a silver lining there. But you require, people talk about business analytics and business intelligence, but they don't have personal intelligence. They don't have self-awareness analytics, which is so crucial right now. We don't build it up in crisis, you will flounder, right? So understanding yourself so deeply that, I'm pretty sure in the internet marketing field, you've heard of people talking about the word pivoting, right? Oh, we need to pivot now, pivot the business, blah, blah, blah. Mind you, pivoting can happen only if you're prepared or if you're lucky, right? So let's put it this way. The more you prepare, the luckier you will be.
That's
if
true.
you have a primary skill set, let's say your primary skill set is acting. Your primary skill set is MCing. Is it essential service now? Sorry, it isn't, right? Even though the world needs entertainment right now.
Yeah, it does. It definitely does.
All right. But it's not deemed as an essential service. But if you are an MC and you were trained in first aid and basic nursing skills, guess what? You can be almost immediately automatically deployed as a para-nursing professional to help out front lines. Okay? So now people are rethinking this entire. I'm speaking to a HR professional. We're going to be talking about some trends of hiring and employment post-COVID, right? I can guarantee you that people are not going to just look at your basic primary skill set. You're going to look at secondary and tertiary skill sets. In other words, if you're only having one singular degree, you will be less favored than someone who may not be as good as you in your personal primary skill set, but also has a secondary skill set to fall back on. All right. So you may be an engineer, but you're also very good at, let's say, customer service or service recovery. You may be a lawyer, but you're also very good at, let's say, safety protocols in HR, EHS type of thing. Now, those kinds of duplications mean that when the primary skill set no longer is essential, you have a safety net and it makes you feel good. The whole skills future thing, I don't quite agree with the way it is schemed, but I like it as a movement, okay? Go get yourself skills, cybersecurity, AI, all that. But remember, cybersecurity and AI are not essential skills.
Right? That's true.
So pandemic situation, right?
That's true.
This is critical. In order for us to be able to become, shall I say, resilient, we prepare ahead of time so that you don't have to worry. They used to say save for a rainy day, but actually saving just money for a rainy day, that's silly. You ought to back up with skill sets. How about network? You can't pivot on a network. Let's say your network is all in oil and gas, then suddenly everything dropped and you had to get laid off, right? I'm sorry, your network is all in oil and gas. You will be helpless.
That
That's
is
why
true.
networking is so critical for you to hedge your base, right? So remember, this whole thing about mental health is associated with a lot of other areas. One area is social well-being, right? So if you're hanging around a bunch of people who are constantly complaining all the time, guess what? Your mental health is going to go down,
Yep.
right? But if you're hanging around people who are very resourceful, they're supportive of one another, they they know when to empathize with you and when to kick your butt, right? These are the people you ought to be hanging around with, right?
Mm.
Because you need sometimes that impetus to get shoved outside of the self-pity zone and into the zone of change, right? So the social environment really, really is important. Are you making the right kinds of friends right now? Do you have the right kind of network that is going to prove? Like, for example, I wanted to help a lot of people, but I realized I did not have the network to go and push my service
Mm.
in order to help people, right? Whether it's a volunteer series of group, NGOs or whatever. I don't have that kind of a network. I only have a corporate HR network. So I decided that since it was going to be difficult for me to pivot, I'll just stick with what I'm good at doing and be mindful of the expansion of that network in the future. So remember, this whole diagram of the bridges transition model tells us that we need to be prepared for the new beginnings, right? I can tell you this, there are so many new beginnings right now. You cannot believe it.
So with regards to that,
Would
actually, I
you
have
be?
a quick question for that, right? Is I
Yeah,
think before
yeah,
that, I
yeah,
just want to show up Alan that Alan made a good comment about this is earlier about the caregivers for dementia
of course.
patients for that. So, but the other question I think we have over here that which you're getting into is like all this inactivity, this downers, this motivation. Does it have any relationship to our identity?
Now, the question, of course, is what is identity, right?
Mm.
So I know that one of the most uh, famous people who talk about identity and self self acknowledgement of your personal values, belief systems is Anthony Robbins.
Yep.
So when you understand what identity is, it's actually a very shall I say that there's no such thing called a singular identity, right? You are made up of your parents, your teachers, your best friends, your intimate partners, etc., right? Your business partners. You're all enmeshed into one.
Mm.
However, as time goes by, depending on who you hang around with, this sense of identity changes as well. Now, what actually causes this inactivity, dullness, and lack of productivity? Firstly, is the destabilization, the lack of homeostasis, right? And then you're attempting to get back into a flow, but you don't. Why? My guess is you've allowed the environment to shape it for you. You've allowed the corporation, the boss to do that for you, to dictate that for you, rather than taking it on your own volition to start planning, to do your to-do list, your urgent and important things that need to be done, to set your boundaries, to have self-leadership. If you have not been practicing that muscle, when you're forced to have to carry that load using that muscle, guess what's going to happen? You're going to feel helpless. You can't,
That is true.
right? So it's important to recognize that whatever pain that is happening right now, the fractures and the cracks are only showing because of the pressure caused by the circumstances. But we are not defined by our circumstances, right? Let's take a look at all the popular figures out there. Zhou Jielun, right? Jay Chou. He didn't come from like a very well-to-do family, but now he is, right? He's made his destiny. Take a look at people like Oprah Winfrey, right? Nick Vujicic, born without arms and legs.
Yeah.
All of these people point to one single direction, that if you wanted to forge your way forward to your own destiny, you have to make a decision. So the ability to, in fact, journaling your decisions on a day-to-day basis will help you to get clear about your internal mechanics. If you don't journal your decisions, why did I choose to eat ice cream today? Because now I'm facing the consequence of putting on weight, right? Or hypoglycemic or whatever. Why did I choose to scold that person just now? Now it's potentially going to lead down a complaint path or whatever it is. So as you begin to think and become very conscious about the nature of the decisions you made, that okay, so actions are caused by decisions, right? So you basically take a look at your actions through the day and go like, why in the world did I do that? Right? What was the reasoning behind doing that, or the feeling or the emotion? Was I acting on reason, or was I acting on emotion, or combination of both? And once you're able to know this, you understand your pattern, you recognize yourself. So the next time it's going to happen, that trigger is going to get kicked off like that. What you can do is you make space in between the trigger and the response. Very prominent book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. He says this: in between stimulus and response is choice. And if you are unable to put choice in, then you are just nothing more than a robot, right? You're nothing more than an animal with animal instincts. We are more than that, right? So it's important, therefore, to not just look at identity. In fact, there's something very cute that I thought I should share. And let me just do a quick screen share over here. It's on a concept known as enclosed cognition. Don't know if any of you have heard of this before, but the idea is this. Enclosed cognition, you can put on your power. There's a lot of research that talks about this. Yeah, it's known as, let's scroll further down. It's known as embodied cognition. So the part of you that you wear, a specific article of clothing, has an impact on your identity. Now, how weird is that? Right? So when you think about it, and there's this funny experiment that was conducted. Kids of average intelligence were polled for whether they like Batman or not. So they had two experimental groups. Both groups loved Batman. One group was told to wear Batman outfits to solve an impossible puzzle. Basically, the scientists wanted to see how long these kids persevered. And guess what? The ones that did not wear the Batman outfit did not persevere for as long as the ones that wore the Batman outfit in
Wow.
solving the
Okay.
puzzle.
That's very
It's
cool.
freaky.
That's very
The thing that you put on. It's like, do you have that favorite article, that ring that makes you feel like powerful, that necklace, that jacket, that cap that Tiger Woods always wears? If it does, and it makes you feel good, hey, knock yourself out of the park, man. The other one is your physiology. If you know how to shift your physiology, and Anthony Robbins talks about this all the time, but you need to find your center. In the Tao Te Ching, one of the key things that they talk about is protecting your heart above all else. It's an ancient proverb, right? Above all else, protect your heart. Actually, in direct translation, it means guard your center, right? Guard your center. Now, in martial arts, guarding your center is very easy. You keep balance, you have a stance, you protect your center. But most of us are off center. Let me show you.
Yep.
Immediately off center. Guess what? It's sending a picture to your immune system to say, let's let this guy fall sick. Now, of course, this is just very simplistic reasoning. There's more to it than meets the eye. You better have bioavailable nutrition, because just as social elements can affect your mental well-being, your physical nutrition can affect your your emotional well-being too. I was just talking to you earlier on about this friend of mine who was under a lockdown situation, eating Maggi noodles every day. I didn't even think nutrition was an issue for him until I asked, what are you eating now in the isolation? And he was eating like gong zai min all day long, spam, noodles after noodles with plenty of MSG. Now, you may not believe this, but if you go take a look at the research, MSG is anti-nutrient, right? So whatever nutrient that's even left inside the wontons that are there, you are basically going to wipe it out through the use of MSG inside your gut, right? So all of these things are interrelated. I've been studying a lot of endocrinology and digestive capacity, because I put myself under a keto diet for about 4 or 5 months. Worked tremendously well to get rid of my pre-diabetic symptoms. And so right now, occasionally I still can have my sweets and get away with it on my cheat days, right? Because the body has become conditioned to go to ketosis. Mm-hmm. Now, on top of that, we need to remember that the sleep, most know how to program. Oh, we nearly got lost there. Many people don't know how to get program themselves into the right brain waves in order to sleep well. Now, I would highly recommend, we don't have time to actually do this live, but I would highly recommend looking at powerful guided breathing demonstration by Wim Hof. Okay.
Oh yeah, I've tried it. Wim Hof's breathing technique. I've tried it myself. It's really very good. I personally felt the effects. Very good.
Right. So those of you who find it a little bit tough, use the beginner's version, because he's got 2 versions. You can also download his app. I highly recommend it. That breathing method has been known medically to be able to neutralize viruses and bacteria. That's how powerful it is. Okay. So go check it out. Go to YouTube, look for Wim Hof, Wimhof. He's also known as the Iceman, the guy who would go in his berms into Antarctica and melt the ice around him just simply by changing his breathing patterns, right? So very, very powerful. Very few of us recognize that breathing is the only tool in our arsenal that is not totally autonomous in our autonomic nervous system, right? We can, if we don't think about it, we're still breathing. But if we think about it, we can control it, right? So this is the gateway into your unconscious mind. So if you're shifting your breathing, you can move from a hyper state, like a beta brainwave state, down into a calmer state known as the alpha brainwave state, which is great for focus and productivity. If you're not productive, change your breathing. If you're like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. Yeah, of course you won't be able to move. You're immobilizing yourself. But if you're shifting your breathing, right, getting into the right kind of rhythms, you can even get yourself to fall asleep more easily because you can narrow the range of your breathing down to a theta brainwave state, which is where you're feeling a little bit light and drowsy. The problem is most people feel theta at the wrong time, right? They wake up and then they feel theta. Why? They're not changing their breathing. So this is critical. I think it's very important. It's part of the mental, the physical adjustment that you make in order to affect your mental well-being, right? So as long as you maintain that sense of resilience, that, okay, I don't know how to do it now, but if there's nothing that I can do, I can't even do 3 sets of that breathing. I just do 1 set. Okay, do 1 set for 30 days, 20 days, whatever is your maximum, and just keep rolling it forward. And you'll find that in the 3 elements that are critical for your character building, you form rituals and habits around them: physical well-being, emotional well-being, mental well-being, right? Sometimes it's not doing more. Sometimes it's cutting out. Cut out the news. Don't read the news. Don't watch the news. Don't sign out of those WhatsApp groups that are redundant, right? That have been posting all sorts of bad news or how much retrenchment is taking place, or block the person that you don't like, that gives that puts
unfollow them if you want to be politically right about it. Just unfollow.
Yeah, precisely. So this is great because there's so much fake news going on, and to be honest, even the experts have no idea about COVID-19 in terms of its how it actually came about in the first place. There's been some rumors that someone in China ate a bat and then was transmitted through that. So there's a lot of urban legend going on, right? So take it with a pinch of salt and then go about doing what you need to do. Because if you're becoming an expert in things that are going to become obsolete after this thing is over, then what kind of expert are you? Become an expert in something that you can be good at later on, right? Go and study medicine, go and study surgery, pharmacy, study AI, whatever. Even right now, I'm studying Photoshop. I mean, I should have taken it up a long time ago, but it's a fun thing to do. And just picking something up so that it will have some tangible value next time, right? That will keep you focused on your strengths, because nobody likes listening to their weaknesses. But once you're able to see competence come out of doing something, you want to do it again, right? That's why if you are at the lowest of your low, go contribute to other people, right? It's going to make you use your strengths, and it's going to make you feel happy because other people have benefited. So I totally love that group from NTU. I can't remember the guy's name. They went to set up a restaurant, right? And they're now feeding those who need food. That's awesome. And I love this type of news because I would deliberately curate this kind of news to build not frustration, but hope, not confusion, but clarity, right? I know there are good souls out there. I know people need this kind of publicity. That's why on my Facebook page, there was one day I got fed up with all this bad news. I said, okay, anyone has got people who are doing good, let me share it on my profile page. And that's exactly what I did. I started sharing people like Richard Giam, Delane Lim, and this new guy, I can't remember his name. And they're really doing very, very good work out there. So as you keep your mind focused on those things, thoughts become things, right? It becomes part of your internal nature. I know that's a quote from The Secret, right? It's not a secret anymore. What you hold in your mind is going to affect your body. And how your body is also going to affect your mind. So if you're thinking bad thoughts, it's going to affect your immune system badly. You're going to feel down. You're going to be binging on bad food. Bad nutrition also therefore affects your mental health. Then it becomes this vicious downward spiral, man. I don't think you want to go there.
Yeah.
When I the story about my dad having died of cancer, he was advised by doctors back then that if he had a hypoglycemic attack, that's when you have insulin resistance and you're unable to produce enough insulin. So you feel so hungry, you start breaking out into cold sweat and so on. So the advice was take some sugar, take a chocolate bar or whatever it is, which was dumb advice because you're basically telling an alcoholic to drink more alcohol to recover, right? So he went through that. I learned from that. That's why I ended up having pre-diabetic symptoms, and I had to make some radical changes because it was urgent. Now, here's the thing. I don't know whether you attended Kenneth Yee's program in his group previously, right? He talks about something that, in my opinion, is essential, not just for marketing, but for change in general, which is the difference between morning pain and moving pain. Morning pain, people complain about it. They put it in the news, whatnot, right? It's morning pain. Moving pain, you get your ass out of there, right? And if you ask me, if you're already in the freaking frying pan, why jump into the oven, right? You know that things are bad, so get yourself out of it. Let that go, right? Let the old version of yourself go and craft a new vision of yourself. How do you do this? Sit down and begin to dream. Dream a nice dream. What's possible? Because everybody tries to jump from possibility into execution. That's nonsense. You need to start off with, okay, rather than starting by saying, oh, that's impossible, so I might as well not think about it. How many times have we been proven wrong about that? Flight, space travel, the 4-minute mile. We've been proven wrong about all these things all this while. So what do we need to do? We need to create a plethora of possibilities, right? Yes, you may feel depressed. Yes, you may feel mentally unstable. Okay, good. That's your reality. You can be grounded in that and be assured that this is there, right? Acceptance sometimes is a good starting point. But you also need to paints the picture of what happens after you're done with this. As far as I know, flat lines and then just goes depressed for the rest of his life. It's like this. It goes like this, right? You got some good days, some bad days, some good days, some bad days. That's what happens in depression. I sound very experienced in it, right? You can tell.
I think we're all semi-experienced by the time we all finish with this whole thing.
So it's about on your better days. I'm not saying it's a fantastic day. On your better days, what can you think of as a possibility for your future? So craft multiple possibilities, and then what's the gap between your current accepted reality and that reality, right? Then you build bridges for that gap to be filled. As you're building the bridges, like my vision for the future sounds very funny because I'm taking a look at how peaceful this is, and I know that I'm right. The technology laden, the whole 5G network around our heads, our whole hustle and bustle, it's not some place I want to retire into. I'm going to go to a sustainable living framework where I'll build my own house, have my own power, have my own food, right? Go Zen for the last 20 years of my life.
It kind of reminds me of a video I just watched about a guy who lives on the seas for the past 10 years. You know, everything is all self-sustained. Very, very cool. So anyway, that was an amazing terrain. I mean, it just kept on going with amazing information. Thank you so much. And there was this comment. Actually, there was this question that I think I'm going to skip a few questions. But there was this question I have. You know, how and when do you need to seek professional help? That was also asked by my friend here, Arnold. Right. So when is the time whereby you realize you need to seek professional help? When do we need to do that?
Okay, I'll tell you when I seek professional help. Okay, because I have my own therapist. There's nothing to be shameful about that because you always need. It's like when you need an insurance agent, they're not around. You know what I'm saying? When you don't need them, they're everywhere. You know, it's just a funny coincidence of life. Because when you need an insurance agent, they don't want to sell it to you because you're probably not going to meet the criteria anyway. So reason being that searching for the right professional to help you takes time. Okay. I chanced upon someone who met my criteria. She was more experienced than I was. She was a supervisor under one of my training methodologies in therapy. And I found that she was pleasant enough, and I knew that she wouldn't go about, making judgments. the last thing you want as a therapist is to actually judge someone, just because they did something or they made certain choices. Rather, so whenever I felt that my world was crumbling, I went to meet my therapist as quickly as possible, right? And that has happened, a couple of times here and there. It's not like you must sign a retainer of like $1 million so that you won't have a problem. Is that as and when you need to go see that person, have that door open, right? And even if it's like professional help, what does professional help mean? In Singapore, there are a lot of people who are so-called coaches, life coaches, right? Some are worth some of their salt, some are not worth a single thing, right? So you need to curate your contacts and your network by making sure that you think about it is the same adage, right? You save for a rainy day. You make hay while the sun is shining. Yes. So if you're feeling okay now, go talk and to some psychologists, some counselors, find out a little bit more about them, buy them coffee, get to know them a little bit better. And you come to a realization that some are, you fit in with some, and just some your rapport is completely off. Why is this important? 30% of the therapeutic success of that intervention is based on the rapport that you have with your therapist.
Wow,
If you
okay.
don't have that, then the rest of it doesn't matter. Okay, so this has been empirically studied. 30% is based off the level of rapport you have with your therapist. So if your worst case scenario, then obviously you have to call SOS. But how much trust do you honestly have with that person, right? It's not easy. So go and cultivate this. Put your emotional piggy bank, fill it up right now, so that on a rainy day you need to extract some contacts and call them and say, "Hey, I'm in real deep trouble. Can I ask for some assistance?" Go. Listening in, go take a look at a variety of people whom are maybe on social media, maybe on LinkedIn, wherever. Reach out to them, establish a connection. Whenever you encounter some dilemma, it doesn't even have to be a major problem, some dilemma, ask them for 15 minutes, right? And then have a sampling of how they do what they do. And if it's a dilemma, usually it doesn't take an hour or more, right? So then you can gauge whether they can help you or not. And then don't do that with, and of course, you may have to pay some fees. I'm not saying that you don't pay any fees, but for 15 minutes, maybe that's just $30, $40 is worth investing in if this person is worth his or her salt. And curate a group of them, because I can tell you this, my therapist is very, very, very popular. Okay. And short of wearing her out, I sometimes have to make advanced bookings, right? So I have secondary people that I go to. The good news is that all these people are also friends of mine, and they know not to make judgments. They know when to swap hats, because we're all in the same professional circle. Yeah, a therapist needs to see other therapists, because otherwise, how do I process the emotions from seeing all these depressed people, alcoholics, etc., right? Trauma-stricken individuals. I need to unload, let go, and then build a new forward vision. So sometimes it's not so easy for the caregiver, and I'm very mindful of that myself. Okay, so I hope that kind of answers the question. Scout around now. If you find that you're unsure, just go and talk to someone for a short period of time, just to get a sense of whether it utilization talk, right? But psychologists and therapists are different. Some counselors can, so they utilize certain interventions where they understand your background, and then they're going to use a certain set of protocols to help you to move from point A to point B, right? That's very powerful. It's no longer just sitting down there and active listening. Anyone can do that. You can go downstairs to the hawker center nearby and
Knock it out.
yeah, with the mask, you can still chit
Yeah.
chat while waiting for the food, right? But the idea is that don't wait when you need it. Never try to call on any kind of network when you need it. Build it in advance. Whether it's marketing, whether it's business, whether it's personal help, build the network in advance, and you will be glad that you did.
Yep. Very good advice. So thank you so much to us. So Arnold, to address that again, when is the time where you realize you need to seek professional help? Build it first, right? Start building the context. Just build up a whole network of friends, of trusted counselors, people that you can trust with your own information, that you can trust. And this can be just with friends, even, I would say, trusted friends, people that you respect, you look up to, and just share what you need, and then perhaps they will just give you, they will help you the best way that they can. Now, of course, when do you need to seek professional help? I think Stuart actually mentioned a little bit earlier, is when you need to, like, for example, you're really starting to entertain very dark thoughts, like killing someone, or taking your own life, stuff like that. Then you really need to seek professional help, right? But other than that, a lot of the other stuff, which if you want to, you can rewatch the video again, where it talks about the 5 common uh, uh, mental challenges that people have these days. Okay, so a lot of this can be alleviated by just chatting with friends, right? Yeah.
Just remember not to burden. I mean, as a friend, you wouldn't want to be burdened by something that you're not good at doing, right? So you don't want to be in a helpless spot. However, as a friend, you could recommend good professionals too. So you've got your network, you can help your friend who is in need to make a connection, make a bridge, right? And of course, I need you to remember that when you're seeking such professional help, do remember that price should not be an object. If the therapist it requires you to pay $500, chances are they are highly trained. So rather than going to someone who's inexperienced and you have to go to them several times, how about seeing someone who could probably deal with your issue once and for all, right? For a flat fee, you know what I'm saying? So it sometimes doesn't get to people's heads until it's very, very urgent. And
Yep.
please, do not tell people to go and seek professional help, right? Instead, ask them whether they would like to. It needs to be of the other person's volition, because so many times I've had parents sending their kids to me so that I can give therapy to the kids. But you know what's the funny thing is that most of the time it's not the kids' issue, it's the parents. You know what I'm saying? So most of the time, but sometimes it's both, right? It's a systemic thing. So just remember that professional fees in a specialized area. Remember, if it is painful, you end up having to pay more, right? Major surgery, you pay more. Major therapy, you probably will need to pay more,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Just be prepared for that. And if price is an object, look out for counselors who are from like family service centers and so on, who do offer that at a much more reasonable rate, even though they may not be able to so-called remove the problem, but they may be able to alleviate or resolve some issues. Okay, just a pointer there.
All right. So Arnold says, understood. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Yeah. So go forth and prosper. I think that's the sign, right? That's for Star Trek. Really old. Anyway,
Well,
so
let's live long and prosper.
live long and prosper. Yeah, live long and prosper. I got my facts wrong. So anyway, we are coming to the hour. So it's 8:05. It's pretty close to his to Stuart's sleeping time. But before we go, friends, if anybody who wants to, how can those who are watching, how can they reach out to you? Or if anyone has still any burning questions they have, perhaps Stuart might be able to entertain a couple. But if not, we have. If you have anyone, how can they reach you? Oh, hold on. We have a question from my cousin over here, Olivia. Good to see you, Olivia.
Right.
Not everything can necessarily be dealt with at once for a flat fee, though. A high price does not necessarily equate to good help, or rather, suitable help for that particular individual.
Like I said, you need to be mindful that okay, so I'll give you a ballpark of experienced therapists, right? Like my ballpark is $500 per session, right? It used to be 1,000, but I've reserved that for slightly different clientele. Okay, I won't go into the details, but $500 for a session is reasonable insofar as the person is highly skilled, they know what they're doing, in order for a specific area. Like for my case, I usually do not treat depression the same way as I treat trauma patients. So trauma patients, once I find the root of the trauma, I deal with it. It's usually a single or maximum 2 sessions, right? Why? Because I've been doing this for the last 20 years plus. Conversely, if you're attempting to look for someone who's reasonably priced, you can find someone who's within your price range. But like I said, do your homework first. Not everyone who is, in my case, I wouldn't charge, let's say, my best friend's wife $500, right? So that's a network going there. You may be able to find friends within your network who can help you, and then you can reciprocate in kind, things like that. The idea is get to know who these people are, understand their specialization, and then work with them. Right? My specialization is mental health issues. I've been working with places like the Adam Road Psychiatric Hospital so many years ago, just to deal with so-called tough cases. And you're right; it's not possible to always deal with things in a single session. So pick your fight carefully. Right? Depression needs long-term care. You would not want me to be your depression caregiver because I'm extremely busy. But if you want trauma therapy, great. Phobia, nightmares, whatever. Those kinds of things, easy for me to resolve. In fact, the makeup of all this, the protocol is very, very straightforward. Anxiety, I'm your guy. But when you're taking a look at people who have long-term needs, comorbidity, remember the idea of schizophrenia plus depression plus anxiety all happening at the same time. Okay, that's a different issue. Drug abuse issues. I do not deal with drug abuse issues, right? That one, you really need someone who's in a clinical environment to help, because if there's a relapse, that person is going to be in trouble, right? So things like that. Okay, so I hope you understand this. And if you don't really fully understand this, maybe the best way is to begin to chat with more of such professionals, right? Build that within your network scope. Okay, I hope I addressed that, Olivia.
All right, thank you so much for that the answer as well. So again, we have already passed the 1 hour mark. Thank you so much for all this information. There's a few questions I decided to skip because I don't think they were required right now. But again, for anyone who wants to reach you, or if they want to find out more about you, where can they go?
Yeah, so the first place that you can go would be to Facebook, and just right now I've pruned a lot of people that I don't recall being friends with, cut
Okay.
them out. So I still have a good 100+ more people to reach the 5,000 mark. So feel free to reach me there. If you're inquiring on an organizational basis, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'll be very happy to meet up with you as well. Other than that, my website is stuarttan.com. I run various different webinars these days on mental wellness, personal mastery, growing during a period of crisis, things like that, which can be found in my community of growth page. I don't have it offhand, so I'm not going to share it, but I'll post it in the comments links down below, so that in case you guys want to join, I have regular meetups, brainstorm sessions, coaching sessions, webinar sessions that are pro bono, just to pay it forward to the community. So you're welcome to come join us there.
All right. So again, once again, for anyone who wants to know, you can't spell his name is all the way up there, right? Stuart Tan. So just search for him. He can be found. And so and then for those who are organizational level, search for him on LinkedIn. Yeah. So thank you so much once again, Stuart. I'm going to put you out of here. So again, thank you so much. Yeah. Peace, bro. Thank you so much. So thank you everyone for watching. So that's it for this show. And if you feel free to leave any of the comments below. And so far, that's it. And next time I'll try to find someone else, some other interesting topic to talk about. All right. Thanks for watching.